Here.
Bauer,
Here.
Hooper,
Here.
Alonso,
Here.
Ryder,
Here.
Wissman,
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Looks like we have a full house.
Excellent. Thank you all for your attendance. And next we'll go to public comment. This is item 3. It's a time where the commission will hear comments from the public that are within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, but are not items we will otherwise discuss on the agenda. And we'll allow 3 minutes per person. I'll turn it over to our moderator, Eric Roberts.
Thank you, Chair Potter. I don't see any hands raised in our attendees joining us tonight. I'll give a few moments. Oh, there's one hand raised. I'll go ahead and share my timer. Okay, up first is Taryn Obey. Taryn, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can I first, before my comment, tell you that there's an error with your Zoom link? So maybe that's why people aren't on the meeting. Okay. My comment pertains to the continued item on tonight's agenda. Also wrote a public comment on it. 2 weeks ago, this item caught my eye. It caught my interest because it was footnoted on the prior meeting agenda. It caught my eye precisely for what it does not say. While it did say that it dealt with our IZO chapter 24 and it itemized the chapter 24 sections, it did not say variances in floodways, which is a chapter 24 section. I thought that that was strange. So I wanted to check it out. Given last September's attempt to rezone the floodway to benefit big developer parcels along the river, it seems strange to me. So I emailed staff and I asked for clarification. I asked whether floodway variances section of chapter 24 was in fact to be included. That was 2 weeks ago. And in those 2 weeks, I received no reply other than Director Bolt, thankfully indicating that Heather Hines and Gina Benedetti were to provide an answer. I thank him for that, yet after emailing a couple of times, I still got no response until last Thursday after this agenda was published. Maybe you guys got in your packet a staff report for this item. It was not made available to the public. So I took it up with City Council, who helped me, and that got a response Friday afternoon. Staff conceded, oh yeah, variances in the floodway are in fact included in this item, even though they chose not to mention it. They're seeking changes to administrative decision-making. And I ask you planning commissioners, please tonight, for when this item comes up, please look at it carefully, look at it closely, to hold the staff accountable to what you stipulated last September when the floodway rezone came up, that the staff needs to produce a map, which you asked them for, of all of these riverfront parcels and what the development impact there would be with any floodway changes. This is a dangerous flood hazard area. Please, before granting any administrative modifications related to permits, zoning, and floodway variances, please consider the interrelationships between any modification of actions across these chapter 24 sections. Thank you very much on behalf of myself and my flood-prone Payrand neighborhood. Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to interject for a moment because that item 8B, is shown on the agenda, is being continued and is not going to be considered in this meeting. If there's anyone else there who's interested in speaking to it, we will take it up as a matter of new business to approve the continuance of the item. So this public comment period is probably not the time to continue the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Potter, and for your comment, Taryn. Chair Potter, that was the final hand raised. I'll stop sharing my timer for you.
Okay, thanks so much. So before we go to the committee comments, I did want to acknowledge that our planning commissioner, Scott Alonso, is here for his last meeting. He has a great opportunity in life and he's going to be moving up to Santa Rosa. So Scott, I wanted to thank you so much for all your years of service. You've been a very engaged and focused planning commissioner. And as a senior member of this commission, we're really going to miss you. And I, as chair particularly, have relied on your input and support, and I'm going to miss you, and I wish you all the best. I'm sure that there's others who, including, I see Heather, you're nodding, who may want to thank you, but I very much appreciate your public service.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it's bittersweet that I am leaving the commission, and this will be my last meeting, and my wife and I are moving to Santa Rosa just for, unfortunately, the housing crisis here in Petaluma is real, and as many of us know, and unfortunately just couldn't pencil out to stay here. So it's a real bummer, but yeah, I just really enjoyed serving with all of you, and Heidi and I have been on here since July of 2017. My first meeting, we debated a tennis fence, and I actually voted against it. So, it's interesting how your tenure goes down the windy path of planning issues. But then that very first meeting, we actually approved Brody Ranch, which was a really cool project as well. So you really got to see all sides of the coin in your very first planning commission meeting. So I just really appreciate staff. They do a tremendous job balancing all competing interests, dealing with a very engaged public, and our citizens follow this process very closely. And so just having an engaged staff and really, really committed commissioners has made this a pleasure and a joy to serve. And I just wish everyone the best and stay in touch, and a lot of work left to do. So yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. Bauer.
Well, this is a very big surprise, Scott, and I'm very happy for you and understand your plight to find housing. But yeah, we started together, so I kind of feel like you're my partner in a way, and we were in it through thick and thin, and good and bad, and we've approved a lot of projects together and worked on a lot of projects together to make them better. And we are gonna miss you. I'm really gonna miss you. But I'm glad you're not going too far, and hopefully we'll be able to stay in touch. But thank you for being there and for all of your hard work and for just traveling on this journey with me together. And although we're not going to finish it together, you're still going to be there, and I'm sure you'll serve the city of Santa Rosa very well in whatever capacity you can. So thank you so much for your service and for your friendship. Good luck.
Thanks, Heidi. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioner Hooper.
Well, Scott, I just want to say, both as your friend, also as your soon-to-be former neighbor, this is a painful loss for our community and for Petaluma. Thank you sincerely for everything that you've done to fight for a much better Petaluma than we had when you started. And thank you for being a constant reminder of when we can follow procedure, when we can work around it, and when we need to stick to our guns. We're going to miss you.
Yes, we certainly will.
Thanks, Blake.
Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the committee comments, because first up is Council Liaison McDowell.
Thank you very much, and I too would like to add my farewell to Scott. Well, we will definitely miss you. I appreciated how fearlessly you waded into every issue, and you can only do that if you invest in and are informed on every issue. Know you did your homework before coming to anything. So thanks for all of that. Good luck in your future endeavors. But from council, so council met twice since planning has met last. And the highlights are the fairground meeting. They did proceed with selecting Healthy Democracy to set up the process of impaneling. The next step is impaneling a lottery resident panel and starting the stakeholder advisory panel. And the council decided to use the K through 12 demographics rather than total population demographics. K through 12 school-age kids is 51% white, and citywide demographics is more in the 68%. And in addition to that, took other steps to really boost DEI participation. Also on that same calendar, the council approved the visibility ordinance that we passed here at Planning Commission. And then most recently, the council pushed forward on district elections, and those maps are now drawn and can be posted. There'll only be a single map coming to the next meeting. All that's left is the details, which is quite a bit, which districts are in for an election this year and which ones not till 2024. They also approved the Riverscape development that we've seen recently. And interestingly, council made additional asks, and the developer continued to be, as we saw, a good collaborator with city concerns, planning commission concerns. And so I think the project just gets better every time it came for an approval. I do want to mention that Know Before You Grow is meeting tomorrow, and their presentation is Vision Zero. It's a national program, which also run locally by the county and SCTA, focusing on how to get road deaths, including bike and pedestrian deaths, to zero. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much for that update. And next we have the Pedestrian Bike Committee and Commissioner Hooper.
We actually had a pretty packed meeting this last week. Some of what we went through, we approved or at least voted on to move forward with a wayfinding program pilot. There's a lot of exciting discussion there about adding QR codes and other things to it so we can get direct feedback. I'm excited to see what kind of program city staff are able to bring back based on the money that they're working with. We took a look at the draft local road safety program, and we spent a fair bit of time looking at a project that's going to come before us at some point. It's a I guess low to medium density housing project at 890 Petaluma Boulevard North, and it's, frankly, ideal when it comes to prioritizing bicycle and pedestrian access over cars. It was a lovely project to look at, and we look forward to when it comes before us. And that's all.
Great. Thank you for all that work and continuing to report back to us. Next, we have the Tree Advisory Committee and Commissioner Wissman.
Thanks, Chair Potter. And I'll be efficient and combine my comments on behalf of the Tree Advisory Committee, saluting Commissioner Alonso on his service. So thank you, Scott, and we'll miss you, and all the best to your new chapter up in Santa Rosa, the second best city in Sonoma County. Other than that, nothing to report from Tree Advisory. We have not had a meeting since our last Planning Commission meeting. So I look forward to the next meeting, which will be next week, and then reporting in thereafter.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners that would like to report on anything? Okay, well, with that, I'll move on to staff comments, and Ms. Hines, if we could have the director's report.
Sure, thank you, Chair Potter, commissioners. So I will also start. Scott, it has been a pleasure to have you on the commission. You have always kept me on my toes with lively questions. I'm never sure what you're going to ask me about on the spot, but I think we've done a pretty good job. And I'm very glad getting the word this week of your resignation, that we got that signed down at 27 Howard. So final push. So thank you for all your service. And as we have before in Santa Rosa, perhaps we will cross paths up in this neck of the woods. So thank you again. A couple things. Both Councilmember McDonald and Commissioner Hooper touched on a number of things I was going to touch on, but just following up slightly on Riverscape Townhomes. It was at council last night. So the two additional comments that the commission added was to relook at two of the bike connections, one across, I think it was parcel B, which was kind of between where the Central Green and the commercial area would be in the start of the live work townhome section. There was one connection there to try to make it a little better oriented to somebody internally in the townhome project getting onto Hopper on their bike. And then another was to look at a connection on Hopper where there's kind of a narrowing of the sidewalk and making it easier for bikes. So those are the two things that the applicant did agree to kind of look at in more detail before going to the final map. So wanted to follow up on that. In regard to the 890 Petaluma Boulevard North project, which is called the Co-op project. It was at PBAC recently. Tomorrow night is the neighborhood meeting, which is being held on that project. And for more information, they have a website, 890coop.info. It's a project website, and it has the information about the neighborhood meeting, some information about the project. So for anybody interested in that neighborhood meeting is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. You can just squeeze it in right before Know Before You Grow meeting. So, and that, I believe that is tentatively scheduled to come before the commission on April 12th. So you will be seeing that soon. I also attended the River Park Walk on Saturday morning, and I really want to encourage everybody, both on the commission as well as members of the public, if you haven't yet, that is a walk of the new River Park on the McNair Peninsula, and they are holding that walk the first Saturday of each month at 9:30 a.m. And it was just really great to get out onto the site, talk to people behind that nonprofit and the volunteers about the vision and what they're working on. Very pleasant. The weather was lovely, so it was a really nice gathering and quite a turnout. I also want to put it on everybody's radar that the council will be doing a workshop meeting on Monday the 14th about goals and priorities, citywide goals and priorities in the coming year. And then also just, again, I'm going to keep saying it to make sure it's on everybody's radar. We are having a study session with the Planning Commission, City Council, and Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee on March 28th to talk about parking regulations. So that is coming up quickly. And later this week, we will be launching a web page about that with a lot of resources to do some light reading about parking regulations in preparation for that. So I will let all of you know when that is live, and that will also be going out in our community newsletter to let people know when that is live. And then just to respond to Taryn Obaid's comments about the chapter 24, we have talked about changes to chapter 24 of the implementing zoning ordinance at a study session with this commission, and it is directly related to a work plan item in the council's goals and priorities around affording full environmental review for all projects, including projects that are only site plan and architectural review. So that is really the guiding momentum for those code updates. Also wrapping up, as you may recall, we have a public outreach resolution that was passed by the city council, I think it was 2019 maybe, about increased noticing requirements and requiring neighborhood meetings. So it will be codifying those things that are in that resolution into the zoning ordinance. There are no substantive changes being proposed for the floodway variance section within chapter 24 specifically. So that is being continued this evening to our next meeting, and then those will be available for the commission to consider and forward a recommendation to the city council. There was no staff report for that since we are asking for it to be continued. So there's no document that was distributed that has not been made available to the public. And I think with that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is approval of the minutes. I did not see an attachment for the minutes of February 22nd. Just wondering if that was sent out. Okay, so we will take up the minutes from our last meeting, possibly at our next meeting. And with that, I'm going to move on to the presentation item today, which is the general plan visioning materials. And I'm going to first ask David Garcia, the associate planner. He is going to be providing the staff report today. Is that correct? Oh,
Hi, everyone. So Heather's going to start off the presentation. I'll be sharing my screen, and then we'll have Ron Whitmore from Ramian Consultants and two of our GPAC members who are here with us today, Josh Simmons and Bill Reinhardt.
well, great. We're looking forward to learning more about this process.
Thank you, David. So I'm just going to let him pull up that presentation, and then I will kick it off. We're really excited to be here tonight to provide an update on the general plan visioning process and an important milestone for our general plan advisory committee. Next slide. So our presentation this evening, it's really to update the Planning Commission on what has happened. We had a monumental milestone at General Plan Advisory Committee last month, and one of the things that happened is we had a unanimous positive vote recommendation to the City Council to move forward visioning materials as really a foundational step in our general plan update process. So tonight, the presentation overview really to provide a little bit of a roadmap where we are in the process, discuss what the purpose of these visioning materials are, how they play into the overall update process, discuss the range of community input that we have received through a number of different outreach events and how that input played into the visioning materials, and then turning it over to representatives from our General Plan Advisory Committee, and more specifically part of a working group that the GPAC formed to refine the visioning materials before they were presented back to the GPAC at our last meeting. So you've seen this graphic before, I'm sure. This really is showing you the phases of the general plan update and where we are. So the visioning materials and that positive recommendation from GPAC and moving that forward to the City Council marks really a conclusion of that phase 3, that initial visioning, and provides a foundation and framework as we move into the alternative stage. So that will be the next stage we will be moving into, and that will happen side by side with discussion of our housing element, which is agendized for some initial discussion on housing element and that process for the next Planning Commission meeting. From alternatives, we will move into policy development, which will really then roll into the overall plan development before it comes forward for review and adoption. And as we've discussed before, the Planning Commission in the scope of the general plan update, Planning Commission and Climate Action Commission really serve a role each time there's these milestones. We will be bringing forward to update the Planning Commission to, keep you updated on the process and the progress, and at different times really soliciting input and feedback from the Planning Commission on key topics that play into your purview. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ron Whitmore. Ron is the project manager for Ramian Associates, which is the prime consultant on our team for the general plan update. Talk a little bit about the background and the process so far. Ron?
Thank you, Heather. It's good to see everybody again tonight, and thank you for making time on your agenda for the general plan update. During the visioning phase of the general plan update, the GPAC and the public invested a great deal of time and effort to clarify and refine community priorities, goals, values, and principles. I'm going to very briefly review with you those steps. As a prelude to members of the GPAC, we have Bill and Josh with us here tonight, who will share with you the fruits of that labor. And briefly, as Heather noted, I'm going to quickly summarize the purpose of the visioning materials, summarize the process and the outputs from the community input, and then explain briefly the GPAC process before turning it over to Bill and Josh. So briefly, the vision and guiding principles, along with the pillars, are the foundation of the general plan. So to quickly distinguish each of them, the vision statement is a description of the Petaluma that community members would like to see in the future, 20 to 30 years from now. The pillars are an expression of core community values that the general plan should reflect and honor. And then the third piece, the guiding principles, provide the direction to follow to achieve that vision. Importantly, these are purposely high level and lacking in specifics at this point. It is not appropriate at this stage in the planning process to identify specific strategies or to focus on the pragmatic how-to. That comes next, but to take those steps, we have to first be clear about what we're hoping to achieve. Each element of the general plan should be designed to achieve the vision in a manner consistent with the pillars and guiding principles. In that way, the vision, pillars, and guiding principles help to focus and direct the work that is coming. Again, a tremendous amount of public input informed the development of the vision, pillars, and guiding principles. The current general plan does not include a vision statement or the equivalent of pillars, but it does include guiding principles, which were really the starting point for this effort. It began with the GPAC reviewing those and commenting on them, on what need to be updated and improved and enhanced. We also used a survey, listening sessions, area meetings, pop-ups, a workshop, and additional input from the GPAC over the course of several meetings to update and refine the guiding principles and to craft a vision statement. We'll share a bit more about that process in the following slides. So this slide summarizes all of the input that directly informed the guiding principles. So as I noted, over the course of several meetings last summer, the GPAC helped revise the guiding principles in the current general plan and developed a set of draft pillars of Petaluma. The GPAC's work was then evaluated by the community during the fall 2021 Community Visioning Workshop. In addition, during the pop-ups, participants voted for community priorities, which further informed the breadth of the pillars and principles. And then during the November 2021 GPAC meeting, the GPAC used all of that community input to further refine the pillars and principles. The development of the vision statement followed a similar path. At the pop-ups, community members shared what they love about Petaluma and described Petaluma's long-term evolution on a vision wall. In addition, during the community vision workshop, participants created vision headlines that described Petaluma in 2045. After the November GPAC meeting, GPAC members were invited to prepare vision statements based on that community input, and 10, that's more than half of the GPAC members, submitted proposed drafts. In addition, in late 2021, the city also reached out directly to youth and members of the Latinx community. They did this because we've been tracking participation, demographic participation of participants and relative to what we know from demographics in the city from the census. And so we wanted to ensure that their perspectives were reflected in the visioning phase community input because they weren't equitably represented in some of the engagement preceding that. So for the Latinx focus group, it was convened in late last fall, and it really built on past efforts and relationships that the city had already developed through its Latinx focus group on community outreach. Focus group was held in early December and explored visioning and related issues and opportunities across the city. Likewise, at the suggestion of and with help from GPAC members, the city also connected with youth commissioners and school administrators at Petaluma High School, and in collaboration with them, created a brief survey and distributed it to students during the late part of the semester last year. So all of that community input, the survey, the pop-ups, the workshop, the Latinx focus group, the youth survey, and the GPAC meetings and draft vision statements was reflected in a draft vision statement, pillars, and guiding principles, which the GPAC considered during its January meeting. During that meeting, the GPAC made considerable progress in refining the vision materials, but they needed more work. So several GPAC members, as Heather noted, volunteered to form a small ad hoc working group, which met 4 times in just 2 weeks to prepare proposed revisions. They did a fantastic job because when they brought their work back to the whole GPAC in February, after only a short discussion, the GPAC unanimously recommended the acceptance of the vision, pillars, and guiding principles by the city. One final note, just important to understand that none of these are final products. They really aren't final until they're incorporated, probably in a revised format, into the final general plan that is adopted by City Council at the end of this planning. It is possible and even likely that the vision statement, the pillars, and the guiding principles will get refined as we move through the planning process. That being said, the GPAC is very confident that the vision, pillars, and guiding principles reflect everything we've heard so far from the community about what they'd like to see in Petaluma and how to achieve that. I'm now going to turn it over to Bill and Josh, who will introduce you to these visioning materials.
Thanks, Ron. Good evening, Chair Potter, Commissioners, and Councilmember McDonald. On behalf of the General Plan Advisory Committee and our working subgroup, I'm Bill Reinhardt, and I'm here with Josh Simmons. We're here to reinforce a few of the things you've already heard from Heather and Ron, but also to share a little of our perspective as committee members. For me, at first, I was not at all excited about all the touchy-feely stuff like vision statements and guiding pillars. I wanted to dive right into land use and policy, but through the process and with the guidance of Heather and David and the consultant team, I've really become to appreciate how this work summarizes all the input we've received and how this will guide the process as we move into the more technical stuff. So with these as guidelines, I think we have a lot of confidence that we'll be headed in the right direction. I also would say that I didn't expect a committee of more than 20 people that would ever be so productive, but this has been an amazing collaboration so far. We've got a hardworking group, a wide range of paradigms, and I think it says a lot that we all agree that we're comfortable moving forward with this. As Ron stated earlier, we still see this as somewhat of a work in progress, but this gives us even more confidence knowing that there'll be chances to revisit along the way as we craft the goals and the policies to realize these concepts. We feel that what you have in front of you genuinely summarizes not only the analysis and the findings of the work so far, but really this is what we've heard from the community, and this is where we believe we should be headed. So before I hand it over to Josh to talk a little bit more about the actual content, I want to say that how much we, the GPAC, appreciate you, the Planning Commission, who will be on the front lines of interpreting and enforcing all the final products of this process. And so we recognize that your perspective will be critical to getting this right. And since this work will serve as the foundation for the entire general plan, we really appreciate and look forward to your input. So thanks for your time and all your work as commissioners. Josh, you want to take it from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bill. Hello, commissioners, electeds, staff, members of the public. My name is Josh. I'm a committee member, a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee and the Technology Advisory Committee. I'm excited for the opportunity to present some of the results of the GPAC's work here tonight. Per comments from Heather, Ron, and Bill, the vision statement, the pillars, the guiding principles are the result of a great deal of public input across different types of engagement opportunities, both virtual and in person, allowing people to come to us as well as going to them. I will not be reading the material to you as we go through it. Rather, I will focus on highlighting salient details. First, what you have before you now is our vision statement, or the first half of it. This is describing the reality that we hope to be living in here in Petaluma in the year 2045. Note a pattern in this, that every paragraph begins with a sentence that drives a key theme and then elaborates. We did not belabor the ordering of these, but there is a natural flow. We begin with geography and history, the people of Petaluma and how we engage with each other, the economy, and the common good. Next slide, please. We then go on to the state of our neighborhoods, celebration of the arts, and a head-on embrace of our most existential challenges. And a summation, we are Petaluma. Placing our climate challenge last was extremely intentional. We felt that this way it lands as a crescendo. You may see that we intentionally placed it first elsewhere later on. And that is our vision for life in Petaluma in the year 2045. Thank you, David. Next up, we have our pillars. This ordering, we put a lot more thought into. The ordering here is intentional. We begin with context. Then we talk about the challenges we're facing around the climate, around equity, around demographic changes. And then we conclude with the how we solve these problems. And that is through civic engagement, participatory decision-making, and transparency. An important detail to note here is that every pillar closes with a sentence which begins, "The general plan must." That is so the pillars achieve what the pillars are meant to achieve. They provide a backbone that the rest of the general plan should match in order to serve its intended purpose. Next slide, please. Next, we have our guiding principles, a set of 16 principles against which every choice ought to be considered. Now, admittedly, we had to squash the impulse to consolidate these down to 10 principles, really compelling round number. But we didn't feel that we could consolidate without losing the fidelity of the public input that went into this process. This is another thing that we did not belabor the ordering of, other than to place climate concerns at the very top. And next slide, please. To close by further emphasizing the need for us to be a leader as a city, and that our leadership serves both Petaluma and everyone around us. And there you have it. The vision, the pillars, the guiding principles, all based on a great deal of public input, multiple meetings of the GPAC and the GPAC working group. As was stated, we ultimately took up a vote on these with the understanding that we approve of its substance, but the wording and organization pass muster for now, and that some elements may require refinement and reorganization before it's properly finalized. But again, we unanimously approve of its substance, which I should say is a remarkable feat for a body of roughly 20 members. While we're not seeking the Planning Commission's approval of this document, of course, this is just a presentation, we definitely invite your questions and input, which we know that staff and other GPAC committee members will take into consideration as the process moves forward. Before I turn it back over, I just want to express my gratitude to the members of the public who provided input that shaped this, the General Plan Advisory Committee members who labored over it, and the working group members that joined me in polishing the GPAC's work, and of course, the consultants and city staff who have been incredibly helpful facilitators along the way. Now, with that, I thank you for your time and believe it's time for me to turn it back over to Chair Potter unless Heather wants to jump in.
I just want to express my gratitude, Bill and Josh. That was great. A great, presentation and representation of the process and some of the discussions and where we landed. So I just want to thank you for being here tonight. It means a lot, and I really appreciate your time.
I want to echo that and thank everybody who participated in any capacity on this effort. And I think the GPAC should be quite proud of this accomplishment, truly, to reach a consensus. And I'm inspired by what we've seen tonight, and it makes me really proud of Petaluma, and I'm really to embrace our future into 2045 and beyond. But with that, I think what we're going to do for tonight is have a discussion of what's been presented to date, and then we'll open it up for any public input on the general plan visioning. So any commissioners who have any comments? Not seeing any hands raised. Oh, Scott Alonso.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I'll go first. Yeah, great presentation, and thanks to the committee members who are here and for staff. I just wanted to call out briefly, I really appreciate the specificity in calling out connecting East and West Petaluma. It's such a huge missed opportunity, I think, from a planning perspective to really provide more resources on the east side and more of a neighborhood and connectivity to the rest of the city. So I just appreciate that that was specifically called out. So thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Bauer.
Oh, hello. Yes, I guess this is our time for comments, right? We're not going to do questions and then comments.
Well, this is an information item, so I think we can have a dialogue with questions and comments, and then we'll hear from the public. But there's no decision being made tonight. This is one of the steps in the process, and it's a very important step, really sets the foundation.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That's what I thought. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say how wonderful it was to read that and how much hard work it looks like that took, and how impressed I am that 20 people from all over Petaluma got together and was able to craft such a well-rounded and representative document of what I would want for our city. So thank you so much for doing that. I looked through it quickly, and you definitely hit on all the big marks, and I love that you put climate concerns front and center where you could, and then put them at the end where they needed to be. It was just kind of a little bit of a work of art in a way. So yeah, really thank you. I love your accent on preserving open spaces, and just really well thought out. And I'm really looking forward to this being our general plan. It's really going to be something that we can embrace and put to use and make, and continue to make this city what we all think it can be and what it already is. So thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hooper.
I also wanted to echo my fellow commissioners and how excited I am about the principles that GPAC came forward with, and also just the clear pillar work that's been done to make sure that you kept it at such a short number but encapsulated so many things. I could easily see how this could have been a list of 100 items long, each one diverging off into different territory. And one thing I really wanted to highlight, aside from that, it's wonderful to see it really bounce around from climate to equity to how we engage the public to infill. I think all of those things are so critical here. I really appreciate when you talk about how the city views itself as a river community and how it prioritizes infill, because one of my sincere hopes is that as this general plan process keeps going, we really start to address some of the holdups that in this commission we constantly have to fight against, which are these carve outs from the past. Planning that was made, I don't want to say haphazardly, but made at the time with very little thought for the future that we're constantly trying to navigate around. I'm really hopeful that as this process goes forward, the city will really come out of it, not grandfathering in all of these other things that are kind of holding us back, but really shedding that for this future plan. So just thank you for all of the work that you've done.
And Councilmember McDonald.
I think I too echo the thanks to all participants. I mean, you can see what a heavy lift it is here, and how inspiring it is to have a starting place that we can all work from. It also kind of leaves on the table all of those nitty gritty challenges of details as we go down the road. So, a lot of heavy lifting at the front end, a lot of heavy lifting to go. So a great thanks to everybody. And I really love what it says about our town. I think I'll wade in with some questions. And so the easy one is, how are we doing on the general plan timeline? I saw the snake there. I couldn't tell quite, are we doing good, or are we doing right, just right, or?
I think that's probably, I can kick that off. So I think one of the things that we've definitely recognized is the statutory requirements for the housing element, and the level of detail and outreach on the general plan. We see those moving concurrently, but the housing element is going to be ultimately out in front. And so that's one of the reasons we're bringing that housing element discussion to talk about some of those statutory requirements and some of the capacity we're identifying and our RENA numbers, and to talk about some of those factors. So we have intentionally paused to allow additional conversation, additional outreach when it's needed, and to ensure that we're engaging everybody. So an example of that, for instance, after we did our first push with engagement, and we were collecting demographics to see who are we hearing from, who is coming to this first series of engagement activities. We identified that there were some groups that we weren't getting representation kind of equivalent to Petaluma's demographics, and so the youth and the Latinx engagement. And so we paused and we really did another push to try to specifically engage more, to get engagement from those portions of our population to make sure we have a better representation. So we're moving forward. It feels like we're extremely busy, but we're also acknowledging that it's more important to get it right and to have everyone engaged than necessarily just to keep barreling forward.
Great. And also, I was looking at all the vision statements, and I'm kind of curious how the GPAC feels. Do the vision statements reinforce what the input was in the existing view, or are they a call for change? I mean, there's a certain boldness I feel reading this, which to me feels like it's a leadership document rather than a existing condition document. Can GPAC speak to that?
I could feel that GPAC number. I think it's both. There's a great call for change in some of the the areas of equity and housing and that sort of thing. But at the same time, everybody seems that maintaining the community character and the feel of Petaluma as we know it today, that's preserved. So I think it's a little of both, radical change, but also some deep-rooted preservation. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I do feel it's a bold statement, a bold vision. At least putting it to words is more than's been done before in summing it up and getting it right on the table in front of folks. So I like the idea of leadership. Then some is just there's so much next level detail, which I understand is the future work, but there's certain obvious things like preserved views of Snow Mountain, et cetera. How do we have taller infill without impacting views? I could see the committee is going to have its hands full. Different goals be weighed against each other. As those conversations been kicking around in GPAC.
I'll jump in here and say that as you might expect, absolutely, we have felt those trade-offs and tensions deeply and discussed them explicitly, and have left that tension in there as needles for us to thread in the rest of the process, which we certainly expect to be a challenge.
I think committees work best when they find their common grounds early and have some successes early and build their trust and communication to those tough ones ahead. I note in item 3, protecting and restoring the river, does a general plan fund these efforts? Is a dredging fund anticipated? Those are things that I don't know if you've touched on. What funds will come from general plan?
I don't think we've gotten, that's really going down into some of the implementation that we're going to need. And that is part of what we will be discussing. And that was, an important part when we released the RFP for the general plan update. My recollection is that was a real focus of input we received from the community saying we need this general plan to also help us figure out how to implement what we have in this general plan, because there was a feeling that the 2008 general plan didn't have enough to help get to that desired goal. Some of the things that was referenced in the general plan, but then there wasn't the funds, the resources to make it happen. So that was part of something we looked at and included in the RFP. And so we will be looking at implementation ideas and measures to make this, a plan that not only is, a beautiful dream, but is actually something we can realize.
Yeah, I see that funding the dream is the trick. I do love the restoration of the trestle being in there. That's totally cool. In item 5, we use a bold word called guaranteeing food security and things. And I'm just not clear that we can actually guarantee. So if further crafting occurs, for me, I think, we need to figure out how we guarantee. Guarantees just a huge word for that kind of thing.
If I may jump in, Councilman McDonald, points well taken. There's something, Heather spoke well to the mechanics and where we are in the process and what we will delve into down the line. There's a philosophical component in here that is shared across the GPAC, as seen by the fact that this was unanimously approved, which is that we are thinking, we're thinking boldly, absolutely. And we are also made intentional choices to use strong words like must, guarantee. We also, you may note, there are places where we speak about things that are not necessarily city jurisdiction. We talk about schools, for instance, and this is famously or infamously a completely different system. We discussed that, and there was a shared appreciation on the GPAC that the artifact, the sort of the Byzantine artifacts of government are important, but also not necessarily material to creating a vision that is holistic. And so the hope is that by speaking in ways that may cross some jurisdictional boundaries, that also encourages collaboration and this to be a more multi-stakeholder process than it might otherwise be.
There's nothing wrong with being bold there. I totally support that one. And I think it engages more people when you get out and get bold. There's an item 6 and C. It's bicycling. There's in the context of what Commissioner Alonso was talking, east-west issues. With the bicycling, crosstown connections, I think that also within the east or within the west. I wish someone from GPAC would stand up at Council's goal setting Monday and say, "Show me bike boulevards. Show me biking and walking on Water Street." SMART connects the east and west, but it only extends to Payran. But easily punch right through to Water Street and Brewster's. Think of that. Easy bicycling from Corona Station to downtown. I see this as a climate issue, and it's kind of buried in the discussion of east-west. Surely the GPAC had its discussions for how and where to place each of these types of items appropriately. And also stated again in item 12, which is mobility. But I think I didn't see much about getting to work out of your car. It sort of seems like the work element is secondary to broader mobility. So I'd love to know if we talked about how to get commuters, how to get local working out of cars.
Yes, absolutely. There was discussion of, for instance, the need for greater access to housing locally so that more people who work in Petaluma can also live here. And that was paired also with discussions of, bolstering active transit and other modes of transit so that folks within Petaluma aren't commuting across it in their cars either.
Right, good, yeah, all these details still to be fleshed out. And I'd love to see a statement that's a vision statement down in the details that says that long commutes must be a mindset of the past. I think so much of a bedroom community mentality as we have built with suburban sprawl. I mean, that's just got to be cracked and done in a different, better way, and no better way than to say it. Say what you mean there. In item 8, we talk about affordable housing, and there is city properties that could be and have been in process for trying to get into affordable housing. And I'd love GPAC to, make statements about city lands and what the timeline is. Too much great vision doesn't occur till the young get old. And so we need to figure out how to have solutions happen, visions implement more rapidly than history tells us they do. And I also saw there's no statement of collaboration or direction to developers, probably yet. I understand so much of tonight's discussion is yet, but encouraging specific or preferred outcomes, particular outreach, and maybe there's that term by right, which can mean so many different things, but wouldn't mind for the vision to say engage to get the right housing, not to, there's sort of a wish to get the right thing, and then there's sort of what that the general plan will put something in that makes that happen, rather than that hard thing of going from the vision of what you want to what you're willing to do to get that. And I think that's enough kicking off questions and interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, council member. And I do feel like these pillars and visions are bold statements, and we have a lot of work to do to translate those now into how we create that, how to implement it, how to pay for it, all those other questions. So just keeping in mind, we're at the beginning, we're inspired, and I'm looking forward to hearing other comments from the commissioners and the public. So Commissioner Ryder, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair Potter. And really, I just want to express my gratitude and a little bit of awe, frankly, at this document, and uplift for those who haven't had a chance to read it. Like for me, there's a really finely crafted balance between environment and humans. And I really specifically love the psychological and physical connectivity that's called out here, is looking at us as whole people as well. So I just wanted to uplift that component as being really honoring a lot of different parts. And of course, the devil's in the details, but I look forward to seeing what's next. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hooper.
I just wanted to say, having heard some other comments, one thing I wanted to stress: it's actually harder to work with our general plan because of how vague it can be sometimes. I think it's great that you're starting out early, being firm in the vision you want to see, especially being clear and declarative about what must happen versus what could happen. We have far too many folks get away with vague middle ground projects because we're not clear on that. And the other thing I just wanted to frame for the GPAC members is that having a bold vision now is wonderful, because I imagine once you get to the policy phase of this, because I will not join in the time travel bandwagon of trying to make you, having done that work, in the future now to answer questions. I understand that is coming later. I imagine that work is going to be difficult as hell, and I imagine there's going to be a lot of compromise that comes with that. So please start off bold in the visioning now, because I can only imagine what it's going to look like once we actually see that into action. So I just wanted to thank you again, and just wanted to say, please stick to your guns when it comes to being clear about what you want to see this community look like in 2045.
And Commissioner Wissman, your hand is up.
Great, thank you, Chair Potter. I think mostly a process question. I too want to thank the members of GPAC. I think it's a very comprehensive document that hits on, most of the chords that I see as critical to the city and excellent guiding principles. But I would ask if this is my first go around through a general plan discussion, and is it typical in a general plan like this where there's really not a section that's dedicated to fundraising and how the city intends to be able to fund many of the things that are discussed and many of the goals that are discussed in the plan? It reads a little bit to me like a business plan that has very heavy on use of funds, but really nowhere is there any discussion about a vision and a roadmap for raising the kind of public funds or private funds in a public-private type of environment that make a lot of these things possible. So maybe that happens in a different discussion, or maybe that's not appropriate for the general plan process, or maybe it is and it's forthcoming. But I just, that's where my ignorance lies, and I just like if someone could shed some light on the funding side of it.
Well, I can start with a response, and then maybe Ron, you can add additional. So yes, the funding, or how we pay to do some of the things we want to do, is not in the vision statement, but it will be in some way a component of the general plan, in that we will be looking at an implementation plan. We may be looking at programs, could be reference funding opportunities, or grant exploration, or there's a whole bunch of things that might come out of that, but it's not here yet. It will be a component in some capacity as we move through the process. Ron, anything to add to that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, that's right on point. These are excellent questions. And I share the sentiment that several commissioners have voiced around making sure a plan is implementable, particularly from a funding and financing perspective. The city, as Heather mentioned earlier, was very forward thinking when it scoped this project, recognizing that that component is critical. And so we have on our team actually several consultants who will contribute to ensuring the fiscal and funding resilience and sustainability of the plan, including strategic economics, who will not only craft an economic development element for the general plan, but also help us ensure that it is financially and fiscally feasible. So yeah, excellent comments. And as Heather noted, we're not there yet. We're not at that stage here, but we'll definitely begin addressing that when we think about the policy framework, and then on to drafting the public draft.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to turn it over to our moderator to open up for public comment, if we have any tonight.
Yes, we do. We have two. Oh, I see some more hands coming up. We'll go ahead and share my timer. Okay, beginning with Susan Kirks, followed by Chris JRN. Susan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Well, as someone who participated in the last Petaluma General Plan, just for context, every single meeting that was ever held for that plan, literally fighting to have included information about the natural environment, the importance of urban separators, what little information there is about open space in that plan, and ensuring that the West Hills were specifically defined. I would like to acknowledge the ad hoc committee that worked on this vision statement. I had the opportunity to participate as a member of the public with the General Plan Advisory Committee. And the first vision statement that was brought forward received quite a bit of feedback. And so I think that the ad hoc committee represented by the two representatives tonight did a really effective job of synthesizing and coming back with a vision statement that really included all of the input that was given. And I appreciate that very much. I also wanted to uplift and support Commissioner Hooper's comment. I think that is spot on. He is absolutely correct. And I think this is a good start for a vision statement and pillars. Also, by the way, Commissioner Alonso, congratulations. I'm very happy for you. Of course, you will be missed, but I hope you'll join the commission in Santa Rosa Planning Commission. They need someone like you there. And then back to the topic, I did mention in the GPAC committee meeting something I think is relevant. And I will acknowledge that no one on the committee said anything. It kind of dropped and was silent. There was silence, but I do think that it would be beneficial to recognize the context of the agricultural heritage of Petaluma, and also somehow work in a phrase or comment about new and forward-thinking commercial and business opportunities, or new and or forward-thinking agricultural opportunities, because there is a huge transition globally that's occurring to plant-based agriculture. And I think this may impact Petaluma probably more than any other community in Sonoma County. And I think it would be maybe good in the ad hoc committee for economic development, which I know Mr. Simmons is a part of. Maybe that's where the discussion for that could be included if it's not in the vision statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Up next is Chris JRN, followed by Taryn Obaid. I'll remind our members of the public joining us tonight to please state their names for the record. Chris JRN, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Neugebauer. My comment is for Councilmember McDonnell and only Councilmember McDonnell. The rest of you, you're welcome to listen for the next few minutes, I guess. Council member, your suggestion that the vision include the idea of collaborating with developers is really, really disappointing. This general plan is an opportunity for the people of Petaluma to decide what this city should look like for the next 20 years and beyond. It's not an opportunity for developers to make easy and short-sighted decisions. Developers can help implement that vision of the city that the people of Petaluma decide on once the plan is done. Council member, the people of Petaluma who vote for you should come first. Developers will come here and spend their money no matter what the final general plan looks like. They don't need a privileged position here defining our general plan. I hope you reconsider your priorities and your viewpoint, council member. Your suggestion here is truly unwelcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Chris. And up next is Taryn Obaid, followed by Bev at Protect Wild Petaluma. Taryn, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I would like to respectfully give a very solid agreement with the previous commenter. Councilmember McDonnell, you are very well liked, but The development pandering has just got to stop in this town. I mean, just by a couple of meetings ago, what are we, like 500% of our target for luxury and market rate? Other cities are saying no, yet we've got a reputation. In the city, developers at a conference were laughing about Petaluma, saying our pockets are ripe for picking because we have such a pro-development gatekeeper team. And the developers being invited into town as key stakeholders for the fairgrounds and for other backroom meetings that have been going on for years now for the general plan. Pardon me, everyone, pardon me, but this is a real thing that more and more citizens are having a problem with. I appreciate these pillars, that they are bold and use concrete, specific language. It's very clear to everyone, and I'm sure, again, respectfully, Councilmember Kevin, it's very clear that this ship is turning. And so it would be nice if we could all be on the ship and turn it together, because Petaluma is a wonderful place to live. We don't need to concrete over everything and over development. Other cities need to step up and do their fair share. Other cities that aren't meeting their RENA goals. So can we please shift our eyes away from developers. Believe me, they're making tons of money, else they wouldn't have been here in the first place. And focus on the people. Public safety first, our quality of life, not having all this noise pollution, all of these emissions, which mean that we can't turn on or open our windows, and we have to then use more electricity and turn on our air conditioning and our air filters, our air purifiers. Please, let's get back to quality of life. Councilmember Kevin, I know you've got good ideas and we want to work with you. Please, let's embrace the excellent work that this GPAC has done. I am just so proud and so impressed. And this is pillars of a structure of a ship that is turning. It is turning and it's moving forward in the opposite direction of where we've been. So we all need to get on the right map and on the right course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taryn, for your comment. Up next is Bev at Protect Wild Petaluma, followed by M. Sullivan. I'll remind our attendees joining us tonight to please state their names for the record. Bev, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you all. This was quite impressive. My name is Beverly Alexander. And we have this beautiful general plan that's being created. And is it going to be a vision or a mirage? The last general plan had some excellent components that were never implemented. How will this general plan be different? Years ago, Petaluma went all the way to the Supreme Court to stand up, to stand up for the right of cities to limit growth. That was a landmark decision. And now it seems that although we won an important battle, will we lose the war? Will we be admiring the emperor's new clothes, even though there may not be enough money to actually pay for those clothes? This means that the emperor will be naked, and this vision will only be a mirage. So we need to not just have a beautiful vision, we need to have the will to make it happen. We need to make sure that everyone is on board. And if this ship is turning, that everyone turns with it, and that we don't have mutiny on the bounty, so to speak. So I just really want to urge everyone involved with this, everyone listening, to pay attention, to make sure that our city carries through with this vision and and makes it a reality. And I agree, the developers do not need help. They are very well funded and smart and are very interested in making as much money as possible. And then they can walk away and we can have our floods or whatever, but they won't have to be here with it. So again, let's make this vision really happen. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment, Beverly. And up next is Maura Sullivan, or M. Sullivan, I apologize. M. Sullivan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. It sounds like you know my name. Many thanks to the GPAC. I think the pillars are very strong environmentally speaking, and particularly the reference to infill only where it is appropriate. It's a very strong body of work. That said, I was sad to see no reference to biodiversity or species other than humans. Urbanization is our #1 cause of species loss, and where we humans are occupying at this point so much of the land mass, we need to support biodiversity everywhere that we can. With climate change, including historic drought and hotter temperatures, we're going to lose a lot of our native trees, especially in wildlands, places like Helen Putnam Park, for example. Places where trees and thusly habitat and biodiversity have the best opportunity to thrive, which are going to be near sources of water like our Petaluma River and our creeks, are going to be incredibly important to restore and preserve. And especially the Petaluma River sections of the Corona Reach and the Denman Reach. And the creek, Kelly Creek at Scott Ranch, for example. So we must thusly keep humans and infrastructure off of these vital, fragile ecosystems so as to not contribute catastrophically to the biodiversity crisis that is unfolding before us. Just a comment to Councilman McDonald. I echo what Taryn said. I echo what Chris said. I heard Councilman McDonald make reference to the costs that would be involved with restoring the river. Let's be clear that it will cost us many-fold in flood losses. So we don't need to focus on the costs of restoration of a river and the flood capacity of our floodplain. Sonoma County sits at the peak of landfill for atmospheric storms. In the past 10 years, every major flooding event in Sonoma County has been associated with an atmospheric river. And that's from a study from the US Department of Energy. So even in our sea level rise existing conditions report, we call out the fact that there are going to be economic losses from vulnerable infrastructure. And as we all know, we're currently and massively building all kinds of developments on the banks of our river. And we taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this because the developers were able to get to the California courts and they were able to get written into the laws that they are not going to be responsible for losses related to flooding and sea level rise. So it's going to fall to the Petaluma taxpayers to pay for these infrastructure losses, as we did pay $28 million for the losses in the Payran area in the turn of the last, in 2000. So again, who pays and who gets all the profits? Let's just focus on that. And where we're built out to 500+% of our RINA numbers, let's not talk about developers. Let's talk about the fact that all of our census tracts are adversely impacted by traffic emissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura, for your comment. And I do believe that was our last public comment on that item. I'll stop sharing my timer. Back to you, Chair Potter.
Thank you, everyone from the public and our presenters tonight. I am just going to give one brief opportunity for last minute comments from the commission before we move on to new business. So Councilmember McDonald has his hand up.
Thank you very much, Chair. I do want to thank the GPAC, embrace the GPAC for their bold vision. I think it's important that we get out on such a good, strong footing on all the challenges ahead of us. I wish that I was a better communicator, that I could communicate to people exactly what I meant by those comments earlier that Christopher has misinterpreted. And to clarify, I do not think any developer need participate in this process in any sort of official way. I don't think there's an allowance in the process for that to occur. But what I do hear from people is, why don't we get good developers here? Why don't we get people that build what we want here? And what I'm suggesting is we can craft the housing opportunities so that they are geared to the kind of housing we want. And knowing how to do that or having that in the general plan is well within the GPAC scope and the kinds of experts that they bring before them to analyze the subject. So what I'm suggesting is that we not have all of our policies be housing constraints, but some of them be directed to getting what we want, getting good stuff. And so that's what we need to do, is consider how we encourage the good stuff. Back to GPAC, I know that'll happen as time comes and as you get down in the details for everything. So just another great job from me. Thanks.
Well, I want to just thank the GPAC again for all the work and your great success. And we're very much proud of the vision and looking forward to the next steps in the general plan development. So thank you all. That concludes this item. And we're going to move on to new business. Tonight, we'll be considering the site plan and architectural review for a new single-family residence on Hayes Lane. And before we go to that, I just want to ask the commissioners if you have any ex parte communications to report. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Council member, do you have a comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hines to introduce this item. We'll have a staff report. And is the applicant here to make a presentation as well? Yes. Okay.
Yes, so Erica Baptiste will be making the staff presentation, and then I do believe that the applicant team here is here as well to make a presentation after staff.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So the project before you is a major site plan and architectural review for a single-family residence, and the property is currently known as 0 Hayes Lane. Okay, so here's a little overview of the presentation I'm giving this evening. I'll start off with the role of the Planning Commission, some background on the project site, the project description, and the analysis for the project, and including the public comments and the staff recommendations for the project. Okay, so the Planning Commission's role this evening is to determine if the project meets the applicable findings, consider the public comments, and determine if the conditions of approval outlined in the resolution are adequate. Okay, so this item is before you this evening because of it's pursuant to section 16.060 of the zoning resolution. The zoning ordinance, which applies to single lot development, and that states that or hillside lots, and it determines that or states that single lot development in the West Hill sub area must go before the Planning Commission. So this site, I'll zoom in on the next slide, but it's designated low residential in the general plan, and it's zoned R2, and the site has an approximate 20% slope or 21% slope. So here's a zoom in of the actual site outlined in red. In 2019, this lot was actually included the lot immediately south of it, which is, you can sort of see is outlined here. The applicant owns both of these parcels. The project is to construct a single-family residence, approximately 1,050 square feet, with a height of 30 feet. The proposal meets all of the setback requirements in the R2 zone. And you can see it's really just in the southeastern portion of the lot. So it's in a 180-foot setback from the front property line, approximately 40 feet in the rear, 25 feet on the eastern side of the lot, and over nearly 200 feet from the west property line. The applicants aren't proposing to remove any of the existing trees on this site. There are a number of protected trees. Instead, to make way for the driveway, they will have to trim some of the oak tree limbs here to make way for the driveway. Currently, the site is really just grassy, as you can see in the slide. There are a number of different trees here, and you can see that there are some trails here. And so people primarily use this as a hiking. They hike to some of the open space that's immediately west of the site. So here is the first floor plan. The property is accessed through via a turf stone driveway, which is a permeable paver. The first floor of the home has a 3-car garage, accessed through 3 separate doors here. There's an exterior staircase that leads up to the primary floor of the residence. So here you see that the project consists of 2 bedrooms. The primary bedroom here, 2 bathrooms, a bedroom over here, a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, and a playroom. As you can see, there's an exterior staircase you saw on the previous slide. There's a deck which provides access to the living room, and the rear patio is accessed through these doors from the dining room, and the porch here, the rear patio here, also consists of some built-in benches, some fruit trees, and plants, native plants, and a vegetable garden. And the applicants are also proposing having a 50-gallon rainwater catchment barrel and irrigate all of their landscaping with gray water. Here are the elevations of the project. This front elevation here is the same elevation you saw on the first slide, which shows both levels of the residence. On the lower level, the garage with the 3 bays, as mentioned, and the primary floor is above. The main level here, you see that there's this pitch 45-degree roof, and then 2 other sloping roofs about a 14-degree angle, and there are some gooseneck lights. There's some gooseneck lights along the building as well. You can see that the building is quite symmetrical, and that sort of carries on to the rear elevation, which you can see that you cannot see the first floor from the rear elevation here, which is also demonstrated in the east and west elevations. Some architectural features here, you see that there is this vertical hardy plate siding that's carried throughout the main level. Again, some more symmetrical windows, and there are solar panels on the west elevation. And I go into more detail of the elevations within the staff report. So the applicant provided this rendering of the proposed residence. This is viewing from the cul-de-sac, the Hazeline cul-de-sac, which is further south of the site. So you can see that the structure is really nestled into the hillside here and slightly shielded from the existing trees. Another rendering on this sheet also I put the circle here in case you couldn't see the home. This bird's eye view showing the home, and again, it's quite nestled in the hillside, and you see that and sort of the design takes into consideration the slopes of the hillside. One moment. Okay. I have a visitor. Okay, so some of the colors, materials, and the lighting of the proposal. The applicants are going really with a farmhouse style, which is complementary of the surrounding residential, the residential nature of the neighborhood. So we have a corrugated roof, the gooseneck lighting, which you saw in the elevations. There's this hog wire guardrail style for the exterior staircase, which makes it a little bit lighter. And there are folding doors, and which will have a black trim, and the windows will also have a black trim. And the house, as you saw in the renderings, is primarily white and gray stucco. Okay, so some of the things that the findings that are required for this proposal include the general plan, policies, which are expanded upon in the staff report. And so some of the policies include using land efficiently by promoting infill development, preserving the overall scale and character of the established residential neighborhoods, and allowing development in hillside areas that preserve the ridge lines and are site sensitive. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this project is before you because it's a hillside development within the West Hillside area of the general plan. And these are the findings that the application has to meet, which they comply with, and again are expanded upon in the staff report. And some other two other chapters of the zoning ordinance which apply to this application. One, tree preservation. The applicants are not proposing the removal of any trees on the site. They're preserving all the trees, and they will ensure that the trees are protected during construction. And the site plan and architectural review findings are abbreviated here, but the project is proposing quality materials that are in harmony with the overall design. The farmhouse style is compatible with the site and the neighborhood. And it's the siding and the structure is in the southeastern portion of the site, which reduces its visibility from different vantage points and also allows it to be closer to some of the other residential developments. And the overall, the massing of the building isn't, I thought this would be all right. So the size of the 30-foot tall building isn't completely, it's sort of within the, it's sort of set back into the hillside, which reduces its visibility from other areas. And the landscaping, again, they're not proposing to remove any of the trees. And I should have mentioned that the access to the site is through an existing parking lot immediately east of the site. So they'll have a long driveway from the two commercial uses that are immediately east. This project is exempt from CEQA, specifically section 15303 for single family residences, and it's because it's within a residential zone. I didn't change this title, but the applicant held a virtual neighborhood meeting on February 17th, 2022. There were about 20 attendees at this meeting. And some of the concerns that were raised were public access to the site, since currently it's used as an informal hiking trail. Asked whether the property would be fenced. The applicants are not proposing any fencing. And visibility, maintenance of the site, and the process of this approval and the construction. This item was noticed applicants receive, or a notice was sent out to property owners within 1,000 foot radius of the site, and there was also on-site signage installed. And we did receive 2 public comments on this proposal, one today and one last week, which was circulated to the commissioners and uploaded to the website today. One comment was regarding the public access, the hiking trails, and the other was regarding preserving the site for to retain the natural habitat and public access as well to the private open space immediately west of the site. With that, the project, as outlined in the staff report, is consistent and exceeds the findings required for this application. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving the project at 0 Hayes Lane. And that concludes my presentation. And with that, the applicants, DJ and Emily, are here to answer any questions, and their architect is also present.
Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to hearing from the applicant and the architect. So please proceed.
Hello, my name is Emily Cozen, and this is my husband, DJ Geeker. And I just want to start off by saying how excited and thrilled we are to have finally made it to this stage. This is a culmination of a lot of hard work and learning and dedication from ourselves and from our team. And particularly want to thank Erica for all of her help and that beautiful report. So thank you so much for allowing us to be here. I'd like to share a little bit about ourselves and about our vision for this project. If you will humor me, I'm actually going to just open with a quote from Obie Kaufman's book, The California Field Atlas, just to get us started. And then I have just a few brief comments so you understand a little bit about us and the project. Life has always been crowded in California. Everyone has always wanted to live here, and that is because everyone thrives here. Living in California, we are given the most beautiful gift and the most sacred responsibility. We have a moral imperative to act as kind stewards to the natural and wild systems that struggle to sustain themselves in this time of extinction. Everywhere in California, you find deep systems of living networks that are struggling to survive. So to the project in that vein, as you saw in the report, this is a very small house, about 1,000 square feet, which just on the parcel that we're speaking of constitutes about 1% of the land, much less, about half of that if you were to take in all 5 acres that we own. The house involves minimal grading and will be minimally visible from any public right-of-way. Our overall vision of living there and this project is really to engage our kids in the natural world that's there. We love this piece of property and we very much want to take care of it. We also want to acknowledge that the public has enjoyed this piece of property, but I also want to acknowledge that this is not always a positive thing when we think about protecting the wildlife that lives there. When I have walked that piece of property, our piece of property, I notice a lot of dog waste. There's unleashed dogs there. There's trash. There's graffiti on many of the trees, including what our family has come to call the magic tree, which is an amazing tree with long, long branches. I found people sleeping in the ravine with leftover trash and tents and bicycles left there. Once when I was walking there, I was walking by myself and I saw a bobcat in front of me walking down the trail, and I was kind of terrified, but also quietly followed it and watched as it nestled itself underneath a small tree. And along came a couple with an off-leash dog, and it the bobcat took off. And I don't think they ever even realized how close they or their dog had been to a bobcat. So while I know that people enjoy the land, I also want to call the attention that the existing level of foot traffic there is also harmful to the wildlife that lives there. And we very much want to preserve the wildlife and enhance it. We bought both lots in particular because we didn't want someone to come in and build the biggest house that's possible or allowed on this piece of property. We very much want to be stewards of the land. We want to acknowledge that the space, of course, has a long history before us and will have a long history after us. And we want to take care of it as best as we can and be stewards of the land. So thank you so much for this opportunity. We hope you approve this proposal. It really is our heart and soul. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for that. Is there a report from the architect or?
I believe the architect is just here. If there are any questions.
Okay, great.
I do, but I don't need to speak. It's hard to say anything after that presentation.
Okay, well, we received the staff report and the site plans, and so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Hooper.
I just wanted to ask if there's a evacuation route planned, if only because you're surrounded by grassland, and I'm glad you're not taking away any of the trees that are native to that property. I'm just looking at a house that's very much nestled in what appears to be wild urban interface, and I just was wondering what that evacuation would look like in case of a fire.
I mean, I think the two most reasonable routes would be one first out the driveway, and then the second would be up the hill to the Hayes Lane cul-de-sac. Not that you would be able to take any vehicle in that direction, but it would be in those two directions.
Excellent. And do you have planned vegetation management in terms of the surroundings from the house to the tree line?
Yeah, the grassland, we've been keeping it under control as best we can. I think, could probably be doing a better job, especially of the underbrush that has been developing there over the years. The intention is to go in probably with some goats to clear out a lot of the, especially, it has been mowed for years, but the underbrush has really become quite a tangle.
Thank you. And I don't ask this to penalize you. I recognize that land's been left to be what it is. It's just once we have anything on that land, the risk of something happening goes up exponentially. So I just want to make sure there was a plan in place. I'm glad to know you have goats in mind for the larger piece of land. One thing I would keep in mind, you're probably going to want to add something to address the fact that you're going to have trees on either side of your driveway when you're trying to evacuate. Absolutely protect the trees, but just you might need a sprinkler system or something in place in that situation.
Vice Chair Bauer.
Oh, hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask right now about the stormwater drainage, because I noticed your house is very close to the ravine or that water course, and we're going to be coming into a time where the intensity of our storms are pretty intense, where we're getting a lot of rain all at once, and it looks like it's going to go right next to your house. And I'm just wondering what your plan is for controlling that stormwater discharge.
I could respond to that. We're collecting all our rainwater and storing. We've got storage tanks for our rainwater, and then overflow will go out to discharge to various discharge areas, pipes with perforations so that it would steep into the ground slowly, hopefully near trees, so we can encourage trees that we love that are needing more water to have water. but we are not discharging into the stormwater. We're going to spread it and seep it into the ground.
Are you having, I guess you're having stormwater storage tanks on site?
Yes.
Wait. I think you're maybe asking a different question than the answer was for. I think, is there a question about stormwater collected through the entire ravine and coming down, not necessarily falling on the house, but rainwater throughout the whole valley, concentrating in the ravine and coming through the driveway?
Yeah, during storms. Yeah.
Yeah, there is an existing culvert there, and then we'll need to do an inspection to make sure that it is sized adequately. But the proposed driveway crosses the existing culvert, so we want to make sure that that is sized appropriately for any storm that is feasible.
Yeah, I just, make sure you think about the future intensity, because I think it's going to get worse. And if you size it for what today's storm is, you might be having a wet house. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Roberts, our moderator, to hear it from the public. So the public comment period's open.
Great, we have one hand raised, two hands raised from our members of the public, so I'll share my timer once again. And starting with Susan Kurtz, followed by Maura Sullivan. Susan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Susan Kirks here. It's nice to meet the owners of the property via Zoom. I am the president of Madrone Audubon Society in Sonoma County and also the chair of Paula Lane Action Network, the nonprofit that saved the open space land in the West Hills of which will be north of you in Petaluma. And actually a few clarifying comments, because I was really surprised to see this described as a lot that's in the West Hills sub area. This property is actually in the top part of the west area of the current general plan, and the hillside or ridgeline ordinance applies here because it's on a hillside. So I just thought that was really odd, because the West Hills area of the general plan includes the West Hills area of Paula Lane, and going southward to the area west of Windsor Drive with the Kelly Creek property, and that's specifically outlined in the current general plan. So having said that, I know that there was some talk about this property being in a wildlife corridor. It is not. The property is not in the wildlife corridor that extends south from Paula Lane over to Kelly Creek and the D Street extension. There's a significant amount of development in the area. And what the owner said about the dog excrement is interesting, because our nonprofit plan had fiscally sponsored a group that was trying to once again save the La Cresta Ridge property. And that group had misrepresented the conditions of that area and property to us. It was misrepresented in the open space application. Our information was misused in that application. And so what I want to say to the owners is just to confirm what you're saying. That is an area that has been used as an off-leash dog run by members of the public for years. And I actually would encourage you to limit or prohibit public access to your property, and anything you can do to restore and allow the wildlife and the habitat on your property to perhaps be enhanced and be protected would really help that area, because that is an area where people come and have their dogs off leash all the time. There's dog excrement everywhere. And the people who have been trying to save land in that area and claiming that it's in a wildlife corridor are incorrect. And I'm very pleased to be able to support you in your effort, and I wish you the best. And I'm always available to give you any type of habitat or wildlife or bird input if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Susan. Up next is Maura Sullivan, followed by Beverly Alexander. Maura, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I'm very opposed to this development. I think it's a shame that we didn't change the zoning during the climate crisis. This was a 5-acre lot split in 2019. Human encroachment here will have an adverse effect on biodiversity. And when you build these single family homes piece by piece, it doesn't take into account cumulative impacts on the biodiversity in this area. I don't agree with Sue Kirks regarding the wildlife corridor comment, not at all. As the owners have just said, and as many people who use the area have said, they just saw a bobcat there. This is, once again, wildland interface space. They're not going to be able to grow gardens there without putting up lots of fencing because there's going to be wildlife there. It's going to be a huge issue, as Heidi Bauer alluded to, about the fact that we're going to have much more severe storms. It's right near the ravine. I mean, this is, and it is absolutely not VMT. So here, you know, construction has a massive carbon footprint. It's 39% of the carbon number. And so here we are once again in 2022 going on as if we do not have catastrophic climate change and allowing very wealthy individuals to come in here and take open space and put their homes on it. And I'm just wondering when this insanity is going to stop. I am just outraged as an environmental scientist of 30 years that this is still being allowed to take place. So I'm sure you're going to greenlight it. I'm sure you're going to approve it. And I'm sure it's 100% the wrong thing to do, and that you absolutely should have rezoned this area not to allow this kind of thing to continue to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura, for your comment. Up next is Beverly Alexander. Beverly, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I don't have too much to say really, but I also want to add to the idea that if there's a ravine there that would tend to bring water close to the house, the driveways will cause more runoff than there would be without them. And you said, the owner said that it's a small house and that you bought the other property so that you would just have privacy and it would just be, you know, a lovely place. And it's a very small house. And the first thing I noticed was the 3 garages. I mean, those are 3 garages, right, in front? And why would such a small house need 3 garages? So I can imagine it being kind of a carriage house for a larger house on the property, but it doesn't make sense to me anyway. I mean, anyhow, I just wanted to ask that. And again, the runoff will be increased and the house may be endangered by storms, the like of which we may not have dreamed. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment, Beverly. Okay, I don't see any further hands raised on this item. I'll stop sharing my timer and pass it back to Chair Potter.
I appreciate the input from the public and also appreciate all the staff reports on this and the attachments that were included in our packet that include the architectural plan, the civil engineering plan, which addresses some of the drainage, as well as the geotechnical report. Very thorough. And with that, if there are any comments or discussion on the site plan and architectural review, I'll open up to commissioners. Councilmember McDonald.
Just a quick question. Can I ask staff if there's been like a hydraulics report on the property that discusses the water necessary to come out of that ravine?
There is not a hydrology study unless we have received one of those. We just have the geotechnical study.
I do see city engineer Jeff Stutzman just kind of came on. Jeff, do you have something you want to add to this discussion about this project's review?
No, I was just going to add to what Erica said, that there was no hydrology submittal for this project. So nothing was reviewed for that.
May I ask to follow up, is there any requirement for such?
There is no requirement for that. It would, on a larger project, it would be submitted to Sonoma County Water Agency for review for kind of runoff from a site, but in this case, there wasn't anything necessarily like that.
And then there's already a storm drain on that in the area of the proposed driveway. Assume that's been there for a while, or that's there diverted away from the daycare center.
I think that's the culvert they were referring to, that DJ and Emily were referring to under the existing driveway.
Mm-hmm. And it's in the civil set, and I can open it if you want to look at that.
No, if it's been there and not a flood problem, that's a partial answer. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Hooper.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if it would be possible to make both a vegetation management component and any work with regards to evacuation a condition to approval. And it's not that I don't trust the applicants, it's mostly because they're taking stewardship of effectively of this land in perpetuity. And I just want to make sure that we have done our due diligence when it comes to making sure that we're approving a structure on this land that'll put the area at greater risk for fire. So we've done the bare minimum to make sure that we're not increasing that risk, or doing our best at least to mitigate it.
And I do not recall, Erica, but when our fire prevention department reviewed this submittal, was there anything specific from them with concerns about the evacuation, or the siting or placement, or vegetation management conditioned?
I do not believe so, but I can refer back to their comment, but I'm not sure. Give me one more.
So we could add language. I want to make sure that we're in close collaboration with our fire prevention department as the experts on that type of thing. So a condition to something to the effect of prior to issuance of building permit, the applicant shall work collaboratively with the fire prevention department to identify evacuation and vegetation management measures to ensure ongoing safety. Something
that would
like
be
that.
fine. Just something in writing to know that there's kind of an ongoing thought process. That's all.
And I did not see anything. All I saw was that they were requiring a fire hydrant.
Okay. I don't want to exactly promise what exactly it will look like, because I want to utilize the expertise of our fire prevention. But I think exploring that and identifying that is something we can put in there as a kind of a reminder, and making sure that something gets discussed.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Bauer.
Thank you. I just was wondering what the maximum density might be allowed on this property if somebody were to come to us. Like, could there be a big like PUD here, or like an affordable housing development of the like that we just gets approved ministerially, or what would be allowed on this site?
So the land use designation for this site is low density residential. So we would not get a very large, like multifamily building or, which I'm assuming that you're going towards, and it's, yeah, a low residential zone anyway.
Well, and it
But
is
the-
R2, so that's going to only allow single family. It's
Okay.
not going to allow an apartment building. The low density residential land use designation is 2.6 to 8 dwelling units per acre. And this is a, let's see, you know, a 2.6 acre lot. So, you know, if you look at it that way, it's a lot more density than one single family, but it is for single family. It could have, you know, an accessory dwelling unit could be approved through a building permit as provided for through state law and our local ordinance. Additionally, a junior accessory dwelling unit could be approved. So that's probably the more likely of what you would potentially see in terms of additional unit capacity on this lot, especially ministerial.
Could it be later subdivided and, you know, piecemealed off, or like it, you know?
I mean, theoretically, that yes, it could be further subdivided, but then we would be looking at that, and we do have hillside subdivision regulations to look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, well, are we ready for a motion on review of the SPAR for construction of a new single-family residence? Commissioner Alonso.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I'll move to approve the SPAR resolution and conditions of approval that were discussed tonight.
Regarding evacuation and then
Right.
Fire management. Is there a second? Well, Commissioner Wissman, you second it. So.
Yeah, I'll second, yeah.
Ms. Ellis, I think can take a roll call vote on this item.
Okay, Potter,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hooper,
Aye.
Alonso,
Aye.
Ryder,
Aye.
Wissman,
Aye.
McDonald.
Aye.
That looks like 7 yeses.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us today, and we wish you all the luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we concluded item 8A, and we'll move on briefly to item 8B, which is the zoning text amendments, which were discussed earlier in this meeting. It is proposed that we continue this item to a date certain of March 22nd, our next Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue the item to March 22nd.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Bauer. Is there a second? I saw Commissioner Alonso's hand going up for the last time, so we'll take that as a moved and second, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Potter,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hooper,
Aye.
Alonso,
Thanks, everybody, and aye.
Ryder,
Aye.
Wissman,
Aye.
McDonald.
Aye. And farewell.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to hearing the zoning text amendment on March 22nd. And with that, I will adjourn the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission until March 22nd, 2022. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye,
Bye,
Scott.
Scott.
Bye. See you
Recording
around.
stopped.
Bye, Scott.